Welcome back to Callahan's Corner. If you got some questions, we answer them live right here on Facebook. Coming out of the gate here, beginning of the week, wanted to bring Dylan on with me here to actually talk about this pre-submitted question, and said, hey, Mike, what are the tactics and strategies we should be employing in our service business, particularly this gentleman's lawn care business, as we're going to the end of the season when we've got 2.5 to 3 months left? Dylan obviously has great industry experience. Believe it or not, if you haven't met Dylan, Dylan was actually one of the first Simple Growth clients, and not the first, running a very, very successful company up in Sudbury, Ontario. So I wanted to bring Dylan in for some insight of what we need to be doing at the end of the year push. Dylan, if people haven't met you before, if you don't mind just spending a few minutes kind of giving you a little background on Maximum Lawn Care and kind of how you cut your teeth in the lawn care industry. Then we're going to jump into this pre-submitted question. But man, the timing of this question was absolutely perfect, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good time to think about it, whether or not you're just in the lawn care industry and your season's kind of wrapping up, or if you're in the snow removal industry, you're probably in the thick of it right now. So that's kind of where a good portion of my experience lies, is in the snow removal industry itself. Northern Ontario, we got our fair share of snow, that's for sure. But from about 2011 to 2019, I had a lawn care and snow removal business, like Mike said, and ended up growing it about 100% year over year for the last 3 years after we were a pretty sizable size already. And that really explosive growth kind of caught the eye of my biggest competitor in town. And in 2019, at the age of maybe 28 or 29, my business got acquired and started to help other businesses through Simple Growth after that. So that's, as you say, how I cut my teeth in the lawn care industry.
Awesome. Appreciate that intro. I know a lot of folks here own lawn care companies, and while they're maybe at $500,000, 250, or made that plunge to the 7 figures and beyond. One of the things, at least in my business in the early years, for sure, till we really got things dialed in, is we would go into the end of August, beginning of September, somewhere in that range. And the tendency, Dylan, really is to let your foot off the gas pedal of the business. But we're, at least in my opinion, that one of the critical mistakes we made in my business when we actually let off the accelerator in the business near August, September, beginning of October, is financially that business has recovered 99% of the fixed general administrative costs. The overhead to be recovered had been recovered. So any additional piece of sales that we could actually go in and build going into Q4 in the later part of Q3 literally had a net bottom line profit. So really, if you're looking at your business right now, some areas of the country extremely wet, some areas extremely dry where it looks like straw out there, not grass, and all parts in between. It's been a really, really dynamic year this year across the US and Canada for seasonality and weather. So given the stress of all the chaos with the weather and the hiring, firing, the labor situation, I think the tendency, at least for most business owners, including myself in the early days, was, man, I survived another season. We made some money. Let's just get ready for the snow removal season, or going bi-weekly every 3 weeks, depending on our market, and leave it where it is. But what I can tell you is record-breaking years, in my opinion, have been made and lost in the last 2 to 3 months of the season. So, Dylan, I know you brought together a couple slides that you maybe we're going to look at and kind of break down some things that you should be doing in your business, not to hit the pause button, to actually go out and actually double down and create those bottom line profits. But if you're just joining us, we had a question submitted, and the gentleman wanted to know, what should I be doing to finish the year for success? And what we're trying to do is really go in and line that in. Dylan, I can pull the screen up there in a minute for you. Right now it looks perfect. I'll grab that for you in a second. But right now, the thing is that you don't want to pause. And this gentleman's question, I believe his name was Mark, the question he really asked is like, what do we do? What are the tactical things I can do? Not just theory, but I want to show you some tactical things that you can do in your business starting today to drive bottom line profits and set yourself up for success. And the other thing that is a beneficial effect that I'm seeing, Dylan, especially in my company, is when we have this end of the year push, it is going to actually create better employee retention. Because in effect, when you start to let off that gas pedal, the hours start to shift, not in a good way. So your employees aren't getting 35, 40 hours a week of their overtime. And there appears to be a lack of work and maybe a lack of success in the business. So what you're doing is almost like really creating a really negative, bad taste in your employee's mouth at the end, because, hey, if they're not going to work all winter and they're going on unemployment or they're going to every 2 to 3 week schedules, we need to double down the profit in the company and the ability for them to work and actually have a good, positive view of your company as far as a cash flow and pay before we get into the season. I don't know if that makes sense, Dylan, but that's something that it's not just an adverse effect of profit that I'm seeing, but it could be an adverse effect of your staff in the office and literally in the field for sure.
No, it is a good point. I mean, literally just having a fast growing or a significantly growing company in general actually does attract not only good employees, but just more interest in employees in general. I mean, we would have people that would come and they'd say, "Oh, we saw your trucks around, like we see them everywhere." And we would have people just walk in the door and ask for a job all the time. I don't think that's happening if you're at a company that's declining and, um, kind of seen as a diminishing.
No, not at all. I'm gonna pop myself on and off here real quick, Dylan, just so I can get this centered so people can see the larger view here. So I'll be back on in a second on the video.
Yep, no worries.
All right, and I can do the same thing for you, and we should be good to go. Hold on one second. Oh, magic of Facebook Live. I don't know if that's better, but it's there, so we can at least kind of see it. So that works.
I can zoom in a little bit too. So many people might have actually seen this slide before, and this is like our automation system. Whether you're doing it automated or manual, really, it doesn't matter as long as it gets done. Yes, we obviously recommend automations, but it's not absolutely mandatory. Some of the big things, and I see some of the lawn care guys specifically, like if you only do summer services, sometimes these guys are the biggest culprits of like, oh, my season's ending. I'm going to have a slow season or an off season coming up. I'm going to just literally ride into the sunset and not do anything towards the end of the season, except for the services that I've already sold. In my opinion, that is a huge mistake. Even if you just do weed control fertilization as an example, the big franchises, the Weedman, the True Green, do you really think that come September 1st, that their sales team and their offices are just kind of sitting there twiddling their thumbs, doing nothing? No, obviously is the answer. This fall season is probably their peak sales season. And I'm not talking about selling new services. I'm also talking about just renewing their current customers. So anybody who's just waiting for the spring rush to hit to have their peak sales season, you are potentially just speaking to kind of like the bottom of the barrel customers. All the good customers are probably renewed already and locked into a contract with some of these larger firms. So just to kind of further your point, Mike, you do need to have your foot on the gas pedal in these fall months in order to take those great customers from a company that like True Green that they might not even be happy with potentially. So you got to get to them while the going is hot. And a couple of the key things that I'll just kind of mention at a high level, and then we can dive into it, is if you are not doing, and we've kind of talked about this many times, but if you are not doing estimate follow-up right now on any of your new quotes, whether that's renewals or actual estimates, you need to be doing that, and you need to have a regimented system for it. I see people let their foot off the gas when it comes to estimate follow-up as well right now, where they might have had a great process in the spring when they were really gung-ho about it, but now they just do not care, and they will send out an estimate and just, if the customer wants it, they'll get back to me. When, as you know, Mike, that's just not the case. I think there's some stats out there that say 80% of all sales are made after 5 touch points.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So I want to circle back to, I want to say what's up to Josh Owens. Great point, obviously Dylan had there. So what's up, Josh? Appreciate you joining us on the live stream here. But to kind of circle back to that the big companies, the companies that are being successful, they're making their season in the fall. The big winners, not even the franchises like the True Greens and those, but there's one company in particular in my area, One Step, that was just dominating the fertilization market. They were doing the same exact thing. So it's not just the national brands, but the dominating local brands such as Garrett Matthews, Matthews Tree and Pest down in Shreveport, Louisiana, one of our mastermind and simple growth coaches as well. He's doing these same exact things. So it's not just something that we're talking about. The companies that we're working with, the coaches that are on our team in their businesses right now are actually doing this stuff. They're not preaching it. So they're huge bottom line profits. And I think one of the things that we see a lot in the lawn care industry, I want to touch on that estimated follow-up, or we call it 20 days to close. But it's really, the secret sauce is going out of 5 or more communication points over different communication channels. So the big ones you're going to be looking at, whether automated or manual, is going to be phone call, text message, and email.
Yeah.
And the key there, a lot of times that people are kind of going in and Dylan, you've probably heard the terminology, but it used to drive me nuts. We can't compete with low ball competition. The low ballers are winning it. It's impossible to compete in here. Some of the things that I saw, like in my local market, a couple of guys thought I was a low baller. We weren't. When we actually sold the company, we were charging as much, if not more, than some of the company that bought us out in certain areas. But that perception of the low baller kicking your tail around the place and not being able to compete, what if that low baller really isn't a low baller? They're actually priced more than you in the market, but they're showing up consistently each and every time on these estimates 5 or more times. So before you start blaming the low baller, and trust me, there's some low ballers out there. I won't call you out by person, but you know my market, I know who you are. But anyways, we may not be the low baller, but it may be these companies that you may think are a low baller are consistently showing up 5 or more times. And if you're not following up 5 or more times, you're losing 80% of the sales of your market to the guy or girl down the street. So that may be the problem. But when we automate this system, the key, if you're doing this yourself, is make it personalized but automated. And we want to build in some scarcity and some urgency. So scarcity in the beginning is, hey, our spots are filling up quick for the season here. Let me know if you want me to save you a spot. And at the end, right around 20 to 21 days, do I have permission to close out your estimate? Because basically the consumer is not going to want to go through that estimating process again. So scarcity, urgency, that will be in there. And really don't make those emails, the text messages look automated. Literally make them look personal, like a real person sent it. Because you trust me, as you're scrolling through Facebook, your eyes for sure know what an ad looks like. Same idea when they're looking at email or text messaging. Obviously not the phone call, but they're going to look at that and it's going to feel automated. So we need to make it look personal, feel personal, and that's going to convert better. And the final thing, Dylan, here I want to talk about this process is a lot of folks are like, well, I don't have time to make a phone call to follow up these, or I just don't want to talk to the potential client, which is crazy in my mind. But if you don't, we can go in, or you can go in and create a system with a ringless voicemail bomb. And this is where we create personalization through automation. So literally it rings the cell phone on file, looks like a missed call automatically. And it's a pre-recorded message. Hey, it's Mike from Callahan's Lawn Care. So sorry I missed you. Found up the estimate I dropped off a day ago. If you have any questions, call me back at this number. Otherwise, feel free to accept the online estimate we sent you. Yeah. Now, I don't know any lawn care company around outside of the people using our automations right now that are using a ringless voicemail bomb to follow up an estimate with a personalized but automated message. And when the automation is set up correctly, it literally can be one day after you dropped it off. But those are the keys to success. Where if you're not doing those things, that's time to start doubling down, folks, in this fall season. This could be big, big bottom line profits that transition to next year's big, big bottom line profits. And you're going to start taking those people off the market.
Yeah. And there just needs to be a little bit of aggressiveness with it, right? I've heard from companies, oh yeah, we're doing our renewals. And yeah, we got a good portion of them renewed, but no real urgency to it. Like, implementing a system like this, where even on renewals, for example, if you're a fertilization company, you've sent out your prepay letters for next year. I mean, you should be following up on those aggressively as well. Don't wait for those to be in the spring when you're already busy with all your spring work. Get those done now. So in the spring, you can just talk to new leads. All of your current and past leads have already been spoken to and signed up or not signed up, but you've reached a conclusion with them. How much easier is your spring rush going to be if all your clients are already taken care of, scheduled, you've got payment for them, everything.
Yeah. And as you're doing that, Dylan, you're forecasting, right? We were hoping you're forecasting at least. So our last masterminds event in Nashville, where we actually started to workshop some of this client acquisition and renewal process on the wall, it would be very insightful as a KPI or key performance indicator to go, okay, if I need to sell 250 new lawn mowing clients to grow and hit my goal, the numbers we aren't looking at as a business owner traditionally is, number one, what is my attrition or my cancellation? So if you're losing 10 or 15% of your client base every year, you've got to add that on top of the 250 to hit your goal, or at least get that to stay the same size. And then once again, we have that attrition or non-renewal sign up static numbers. So now when we're hiring those A players on our team, they have a scorecard. They know where they're at, and they know what winning looks like, and they know if they're winning or losing. So we can create accountability through key performance indicators to drive those data. But if you're not tracking and hopefully renewing all those up before the spring season, you know what's really up against it. Otherwise, it's crazy to like, I'm at 1.5 million this year and I want to hit 2 million and we're going to hit that, and you don't track anything. But then when November, December rolls around the next year, you're like, yeah, we did a little over 1.5. We never hit 2 million. But the reason why you didn't hit is you're not tracking on a weekly and monthly basis with accountability and clarity and letting your team know who's winning and losing. So not only for the clarity and tracking, but what Dylan's saying is like, you really need to get this done and up front so you know what is actually ahead of you for the next year to actually hit those goals. And then we get a cadence to track it, because just saying you're going to do it is not enough, as we all know.
Yeah. And I guess one last point on this, it gets exponentially worse if you're not following up on your leads, if you're also paying for your leads. So if these are just like organic leads that are coming in and you know, whatever, still bad not to follow up with them. But if you're using like a marketing agency and you're still not following up on all your leads, then you're literally just throwing money down the drain. So I think we've hit on that one probably enough. Another major thing that you should be doing in season, i.e. right now, is obtaining reviews from your customer. You are going to get a lot better response rate, and that's kind of what's handled if you have any of our automations through the 5-star review automation and cancellation risk report, kind of a little combined package there. But if you send out this email, let's say you finish in September with your last application, maybe October, you wait till December or January to send out an email to all your customers and say, hey, how did we do? Leave us a review. You know, we're trying to get reviews in preparation for our spring rush. I mean, if I'm your customer, I'm probably not responding to that. It's been so long since the hopefully good service happened that I feel no attachment to it. Versus if you're sending it out right now, if you just put down your last application or you're doing your lawn mowing, whatever that might be, send out the survey request while it's fresh, whether you're sending it out manually or through an automation. And let's not only try to foster more 5-star reviews, but also, Mike, I know you spoke about attrition rate. You also need to see which customers are potentially a flight risk. If you haven't done this at least a couple times this year, I highly, highly recommend doing it, even though sometimes the answers can be a little scary and they might expose some things that you never really wanted to hear about your company. At least you're going to know, and you can focus on some of these customers who might be a little pissed off at you for whatever reason, rather than see some guys that have multiple people doing quality control. They have guys in trucks going around checking every single property. And I say, have you surveyed any of your customers to see if those customers are really happy with you or not so happy? And they say, well, no, I haven't done it. Well, if you survey your customers and figure out which customers are actually truly not happy, wouldn't it be better to focus some of that attention and some of that labor towards the customers that truly aren't happy? And you actually go knock on the door and spend a little bit of time with each of those customers. I can almost guarantee you that expending that little bit of labor is going to go 100 times farther than, you know, just doing blanket quality control for customers who might be really happy with you. Does that make sense?
Makes complete sense. At the end of this year, Dylan, I might even, if we have a few minutes, I might pull up the scorecard that was actually developed by one of our coaches, Garrett Matthews, but it really tracks all these stats. And it's something we use with a lot of our coaching clients as well. But it's dialing into all the parts of like what you're talking about. So in the beginning, how many leads to clients, conversion ratio, what are the annual sales and how are we projecting and where are we going? And then literally you nailed it, customer satisfaction through attrition. We track that. And then what we're able to do is track some other things as far as indirect and direct costs versus labor and office staff. Not exactly what you're talking about there, but it kind of all comes together in one picture. When you've done this and you start pushing the gas or pulling the levers on one or two of these things, the sheet actually shows you how big of a company you can actually grow. So we got a few minutes again. I'll pull that up because it's really interesting. Like if you just literally went through just and grabbed this one customer satisfaction piece, I can show you how you can go from about 750,000 in sales as the biggest you'll ever get by just cutting that down to 20 to 25%, which I still think is the high side. You could have a $1.5 to $1.7 million company by doing nothing but literally sending the survey out and attacking the quality and customer service issues. Such a big win. And like literally you can almost double the size of your business just by that one little piece.
Yep.
And we always talk about sales being like the sexiest part. Don't get me wrong. I love sales. We need sales. It grows it. But really where the money is, if you have a larger company, is literally churn reduction or cancel reduction. And then when you do that, and you add the sales on top of it. That's how you build an award-winning company. But you don't want to forget about this survey and quality piece, because that, once you get them in the door, we don't want them to have to leave just as quick as we're pumping new ones in. So it's a nice balance of bottom to top of line funnel.
Yeah. And ultimately, getting back to the review front, you want people to leave a review shortly after they're happy with your service. So just, even if you're sending out an email manually right now, just get it out shortly after your last service is performed at a bare minimum, ideally once a month or once a quarter. And I think you'll see the amount of public reviews on Google or Facebook that you get be astronomically higher than if you wait a month or two after your season ends and then you send it out.
Yeah, and that's in the way we tackle it. And if you're building this yourself, this is how I'd recommend it. But through that social review, we're using an MPS score. It's a net promoter score. That's 1 to 10. A 9 and 10 is a promoter, then it goes to neutral and detractor. But what we segmented is basically the ability to look anonymous when they give you this review or feedback, but actually it goes into your CRM, such as like Service Autopilot, where you can see all your promoters, neutrals, and detractors. And you can go in, and those neutrals are going to be the easiest people to get in to be promoters. Usually it's just something really stupid, like, hey, they're not blowing off the patio once every month when they're cutting the lawn 4 or 5 times a week or a month. So like literally just a quick little tweak, you fix it, and then you follow up on it. You brought them up. But those are going to be big, big bottom line effects to your social reviews on like Facebook, Yelp, Google, as well as your retention. So you could take maybe a 3-year retention on average for clients and compound that out to maybe 5 years. But if your client's worth $2,000 a year on average, you've added another $4,000 worth of revenue by literally just doing one simple process here.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. So the next thing would be focusing on crew upsells. And when I say crew upsells, I don't mean having your crew go knock on the door and try to sell services for you. What I mean is have them be your eyes and ears out in the field. So if you have 5 lawn mowing crews out, these guys are out on the properties every week or every 2 weeks. They should be noticing, as long as they're trained by you, they should be noticing other upsell opportunities while they're out there on the property. So especially with like a 5 crew company or even 1 or 2 crews, if you're cutting 20, 25 lawns a day, let's say, times 5 days a week, that's a lot of properties that you've stepped foot on that you should be able to recognize an opportunity at least maybe 10 of those properties. So I would kind of challenge you, if you have even 1 crew, has that crew produced 10 opportunities for you this week? If they haven't, there's probably something there that could be nurtured a little bit, where you could train your crews to better detect some of these issues, such as bushes that need to be trimmed a little bit, or mulch beds that could use some replenishment, flowers that are just totally dead and need to be replaced. There's numerous activities, lawns that are looking a little thin that could maybe benefit from aeration overseed. That was probably the most simple and successful kind of crew upsell that we ran at my company, where every lawn could be improved upon. So really almost every lawn could use an aeration and overseeding. Did every lawn 100% need it? Maybe not, but most of them could use it. So we actually had a system set up where some of these responses based on our crews detecting some of these issues would actually go to the clients. Now, I don't recommend that for everybody. You have to really trust your crews. But it was really interesting. We would actually have some clients call us and say, hey, I saw the recommendation that I need an aeration and an overseeding. What's the cost for that? And as long as the price was reasonable, they would basically say, sign me up. When can you do that? So they were actually calling in and almost closing the deal themselves by seeing the survey response and, inquiring in our office.
Awesome. So it looks like as we're scrolling to the right of that form there, Dylan, it looks like we've got potentially the last piece there is actually the same thing as upsells. And if I'm looking at a company, a lot of times I'm looking at a couple different upsells. The first of which is usually a one-time service to reoccurring. So if we sign up for a spring cleanup or a fall cleanup and they haven't had a reoccurring service, we're going to automatically go out and re-up those. Can you mind speaking about just the normal upsell process? So traditionally we recommend 5 to 8 upsells throughout the selling year. They're traditionally based around the pain point of that season. How do you recommend doing that to really put that foot down. And with our upsells that we're seeing is about 60 to 80 estimate requests in the first 24 to 48 hours. So, man, that influx there can be a massive, massive bottom line profit, whether it's holiday lights or aeration and overseeing big profits. But this is where the big companies are making a difference here at the end.
Yeah, and that's really what kicked off my snow sales season back when I had these automations. Was literally in August. No one was expecting it. No one in my market was selling residential snow that early. But like, I think it was August 10th was our first snow removal upsell point of contact. And through this automation, it would literally go to everybody in our database who didn't have that service currently. So clients that didn't have that service and leads who didn't have any service with us. So that was all done completely automated. I didn't have to filter anything. And what would happen is it was basically a one-click upsell. So we weren't sending people to a landing page where they had to type in a bunch of information and do all this stuff. We already had a lot of their information. So when we sent out this upsell to them, they literally just needed to click one hyperlink or button in the actual email or text message itself. And we were alerted that, Mrs. Jones wanted a quote for our main service was called tractor snow blowing. So instantly we would pick up the phone because we knew that customer was either probably had their phone in their hand or was on their computer. And we would call them, we'd get them a live quote for it. And 50% of the time we'd be taking their credit card right there and processing the payment. So that's kind of an overview of how the upsell campaigns actually work. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And honestly, as we're looking at this here, and basically we're diving into that process, we're really looking at 6 steps in a business here. And the first of which that we're always looking at is step 1 is to actually buy some time back and organize your time. And that's where we should be working on the business, not in it. As Michael Gerber says, we recommend up to 4 hours a week. So that's where we're going to get really strategic and where we start building out the systems and processes to do just exactly what Dylan's talking about. And we're going to go out and nail each one of those parts of the business. As we're going a little bit forward here, the next thing we want to do is actually get our financial house in order, the business finances, and to make sure the personal finances are in order to the fact that they're not robbing from the business. Now, step 3 is where it gets interesting. We want to build a simple business. So as we're building this simple business, you probably want to take this up to at least 1.5 million or so, maybe a little bit higher, but a core group of services. So as Dylan's talking about these upsells and the follow-up estimates, we're going to look at a select group of services. So in Dylan's example, we've got mowing, fertilization, maybe perimeter pest, and for the winter, snow removal. But we've got different services now that we can continue to offer and upsell across these simple services. So for FertTech's there, depending on licensing, they can do perimeter pest, they can do mosquito control, they can do fire ant control, grub control, aeration, and overseeing. But we're looking at services that can cross-sell at the same visit to the same client. So we can start to double and triple that business. Now, the thing we don't talk a lot about at step 3 is really, if I'm diving in as a business owner or an expert, is we're going to create a simple business with simple offerings that can be run without the business owner. But this is where we really go in and we organize the business, we delegate, and the last part is to automate. So we need to figure out a manual process and be able to delegate it to somebody and eventually be able to automate it. So that's kind of the key part there. Next thing is step 4 is we're going to go in and hire key players to handle this growth. Number 5 is our marketing acquisition. So actually to go out and get new clients. What we're talking about here, with the exception of the estimate upsell, is actually expanding on your current client base. Because near the end of the year, we're not going to go out and get a whole bunch of new clients unless they're probably in your software, your CRM, customer relationship management software. So we're going to work that database of leads, clients, and cancel clients through this process Dylan's talking about. And then the 6th and final step is leadership. So that million mark and beyond, we need to actually become the leader we need to be to get to 1.5 and 2 million. Because I will tell you right now, 99% of the people, including myself, the leader we are at 750 or million is not the leader we need to be at 2, 5, or 10 million up and above. But those are kind of the 6 steps. But Dylan's really diving in as we've gotten to step 3. Hopefully we've created the simple business. How do we use these systems to organize, delegate, and then eventually automate? Dylan, I don't know if that makes sense, but like huge value just brought today, breaking in the estimate follow-up, the client survey, basically for customer satisfaction, reducing the cancellation, and then upselling, empowering the crews, and upselling through the seasonality.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. And I would just highlight, like, if I'm going to focus on any of these, especially if you're like, I've done some of these already, and which one should I really try? I'm already doing estimate follow-up, let's say. I would really say that the thing that'll probably pay you the most dividends in the long run is actually training your crews and setting up a system that'll recognize upsells in the field. I mean, from a percentage of closed proposals, we would almost close about 75% of the upsells that the crews notice, because the customer already knows, likes, trusts you, hopefully anyways. So when you call, I always use the kind of adage of, if you got like a furnace or an AC repair person at your house and they make a recommendation, let's say you're out, they give you a call, hey, you got to replace this. 9 times out of 10, you're not going and getting another quote for it. You're saying, if it needs it, just do it. I trust you. You're already there. And that's the same thing with the screw upsell. And then if you can automate the process, even better. But even if you're doing it manually, I think that's the one that could pay hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of dividends, and is probably the one that is most likely people are not currently doing.
Yeah, and I don't want to muddy the waters here, but I think I can over provide here. Just a little bit. I'm going to share my screen here, Dylan, if it's okay with you. But to put some preface to what I'm going to show here real quick, and to pull everything together what Dylan's doing. We just had 6 companies now from our scale group, our sub-$1 million consulting group, that have now used the automated process. They've gone through the 6 steps. They've gotten through at least 4 or 5 of those steps that we just talked about. And they started out at $500,000 to $750,000, and they blasted the last 6 or 7 months with a certified 7-figure coach working with them on a monthly basis. But there's certain metrics we're tracking to break $1 million beyond. And where I'm going with this is, if you're interested, feel free to go to the website, www.sgscall.com, where you can actually meet with myself, Dylan, or one of our 7-figure coaches. And for up to an hour, we'll give you a free analysis with basically this PDF showing you what's the next area that you need to focus on to double down on your business. And to kind of give you an idea of what that potentially could look like here is this little guy in the bottom here. But it's hard to see right here, but in the first upper part here, what this is, and I got to give credit where credit's due. One of our 7-figure coaches, Garrett Matthews, came up with this amazing scorecard. And this scorecard literally is what they use with the scale coaching groups, with the one-on-one. But in this right here, the first part I've got highlighted up top, it lists all the months. And what it does is it goes from 2022 to 2023. This is an older version for 21 to 2022, but basically it's a rolling 12, and it shows you your sales difference year after year. And based on the end of the year projections here at the bottom, you can actually see your actual versus budgeted on a rolling 12. So that's the way we'd approach that. But now we've got an idea on those monthly sales. And what's going to drive those monthly sales is all the things that Dylan just talked about. So on the bottom here, I'm going to skip the payroll percentages, but we look at our client attrition rate. So we're also looking this as a rolling 12. So the customer satisfaction that Dylan was talking about, we're pumping in the actual cancellations per month. And what we've got in this fictitious example here is a yearly attrition is 42%. Now we've seen this as high as 40% with some clients, that you're just bleeding out customers as quick as they come in the top. But this is a tool that can track that. And when you automate that process with the follow-up, what should happen always happens without you or a manager or somebody in the office being babysat to do it. And then the final thing here is Dylan talked about 20 days to close. That's our automated estimate follow-up. So on a monthly basis, these coaches are meeting with these lawn care business owners, traditionally sub-million, but some beyond $1 million. And we're tracking how many leads, how many became a client, and the closing ratio, and then the yearly difference on that rolling 12 from year to year, and what their total ad spend is. So how much are they spending to acquire clients, and what's the average cost per lead, and then the average cost per client. So what we're doing is tracking that close ratio. So what we're finding is a massive increase in that close ratio when they take the automated system that Dylan talked about, hitting 5 or more times on multiple communication channels. So the idea is now we put these things into play and we track them, we set a goal, and we create accountability for the business owner. Now, the last thing that I recommend looking at before we take a look at just a minor tweak, how you can go from $750,000 company almost to 1.5, 1.6, which is tweaking one little number, is the overall percentage of payroll. So what is your cost of goods sold for direct and indirect labor? So your direct labor is the labor in the field. Indirect is your office staff or like your virtual assistant answering the calls. Now, a little gray area there, but basically that would be your fixed cost in the office. And there's some industry percentages that we want to look at as our cost of goods sold compared to revenue. And whether you design, build, or maintenance, or fertilization we control, these are going to be some averages on a rolling 12 we want to be able to track. So if you're within these guidelines, you're okay. If not, it's a red flag. Hey, your indirect or your direct cost as a percentage of revenue is off. How do we dive in and create the accountability? And now that we've got this all flushed out in this automated system, we say, okay, we want to grow our business. So on the left here is the actuals up top. And let me see if I can blow this up just a little bit more. But this is honestly, this is what these companies that are breaking $2, $3 to $10 million they're doing. We're trying to expose this cadence of data tracking before we get there. And that combined with the automated systems that Dylan is showing you allows you that time to grow and scale that business. But the actuals here is this person's getting 165 new clients a year on average. Their attrition rate, cancellation rate's 42%, extremely high, but not crazy high to some of the companies we've seen when we actually track it. Their yearly value for a client is $1,800 or $1,853. So their ceiling here, the biggest they can get is $726,000. Now, if nothing changes and we add another 165 clients here, and we drop that cancellation rate down to about 20 to 22% of where we would probably want to see that on the highest side. And these are just minor tweaks. We actually had one of our coaching clients that just graduated to the masterminds group that actually had a cancellation rate or attrition rate probably close to a little over 40%. But it was just this minor tweak that literally allowed him to take his growth ceiling and jack that up. But right now, the biggest this company can grow is 726,000 by just taking that cancellation rate down to 20% through the automated system that Dylan's talking about. They now have gone in and given themselves the ability to grow to a $1.5 million company. So literally almost double, actually more than double, by just literally having one systemated automated process in place. And the gentleman I'm talking about in the masterminds group, not just him, but several have done this. But the one I'm thinking about specifically, 99% of that churn reduction or cancellation was literally through that one simple automated process that Dylan talked about through the MPS to social review. So cutting that down from 42 ballpark to 20%, he literally had the ability to double the size of his business without literally spending any extra money or attention, but putting one automated system in place. So if you're not tracking these numbers, you're wondering, what are all these numbers that I should be tracking? A quick review of what is the year, the month over month, rolling 12, sales goals I should be looking at, payroll as a percentage of direct to indirect cost, cancellation rates, lead and client count, client conversion, client cost, lead count, and closing count. And then finally, how would you look at that with your actuals? And then if I just change one or two things, what happens? But if we'd cut that cancellation down to 20%, and let's just say each client's worth $1,800, and through a simple upsell process, we can make each client worth $2,200. We went from a $726,000 company to $1.8 million by just literally adding an extra $300 to $400 a year per client on there through an upsell process. We traditionally see it go up a lot more, at least 50%. So those are the things that, if you're interested, feel free to hit us up at sgscall.com. Dylan, myself, or one of the seven-figure business experts will give you a free analysis, take a look at where your business is now, where you want to go, and give you a free report of what you need to concentrate on. And if you're interested, we can show you what we can do for you. Otherwise, we're going to give you the roadmap to actually go out and do what you need to do. Really not a sales pitch. We've got hundreds of businesses have gone through this, and half to three quarters really didn't buy anything, but we gave them these executables. And lo and behold, 3 to 6 months later, they came back to Dylan and said, hey, what else you got for me? I want to purchase something because the couple things you gave me free on the analysis have moved the lever so much in that business that I trust you. I know you, I like you, and I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel a second time because it worked really well the first time. So if you're looking to see what your business needs to do, how you can double down on your profits for the end of the season and set yourself up for success next year, really focus on new growth, and hopefully go in and add 25 to 30% or maybe 50% to your client lifetime value. In that example I showed you, we went from 750,000 all the way up to just under 2 million as a glass growth ceiling just by pulling two minor little levers. And Dylan hit on about 4 or 5 that you can pull. So Dylan, I appreciate you joining me here. Any questions, comments, or closing thoughts? I know you've got a compressed schedule here near the top of the hour that you got to hop on a call, but I want to thank you for coming on and just dropping a knowledge bomb. And it's kind of cool because yourself owned a business, first simple growth client, you sold your business, you're coming to work with us to help, really help business owners take their life back from the business, understand this stuff. We've got Josh, Virginia, Chad, Derek, several others that all are in the same boat as you. They've worked for us as a client and then sold their business and have come back and actually started working with us. So I'll let you close it up. Josh Owens, this is great stuff. Thanks, guys. Josh, thanks for hanging in there, dude. If you haven't talked to us yet, sgscall.com. Get a free analysis. We're not selling you anything. The value will be there. Dylan, closing thoughts, brother.
Yeah, that was great. I guess closing thought would be, I know people are probably tired, a little rundown from the season, probably the heat of the summer. But yeah, just push the last quarter and I think you'll be pretty happy come January.
Couldn't agree more. Entrepreneurship, especially lawn care entrepreneurship, very, very lonely place. You're not an island. You're not alone. We've been there. We still are there with you. Hey, if you need a part-time therapy session, sgscall.com, at least know where you're at. Hop on the virtual therapist couch. Dylan or one of the seven-figure experts will walk through where you're at, where you want to be, and we'll give you the next step with some clarity because we've been there, we get it, and we still live it. So Callahan's Corner US questions, we answer them here live on Facebook. Dylan will be joining us for some more installments over the next few months, getting perspective just outside of myself to help answer these live submitted questions. Feel free to drop any comments or questions down below that you want myself, Dylan, or the team of almost 20 plus people now on the Simple Growth team. Many of them own 7-figure plus lawn care and snow removal businesses. We'll see you on the next Callahan's Live.